Right everyone, it is Finn here and welcome back to a brand new video where today we're going to be looking at every single Premier League team and talking about who their best player will be this season. But of course, before we jump into that, I would like you guys to put in the comment section down below which Premier League team do you support and who do you think your best player will be this season. But of course, we do have 20 Premier League teams to talk about, so we might as well jump straight into things with AFC Bournemouth. Now, I hate to bore you guys, but this won't be a super exciting one, as I do think it will be Philip Billing. Obviously, looking from that midfield position, scoring 7 goals in the Prem last season, being the third most interceptor for Bournemouth, and getting the most tackles in the team. I mean, he did absolutely everything for Bournemouth last season, and I wouldn't be too surprised if he did it again this time around. I mean, if Philip Billing got any better, he would be moving to Saudi Arabia. Although saying that, I'm not sure that's that big of a shout nowadays. I think anyone could go to Saudi. I think if you look in the direction of Saudi Arabia, they'll probably sign you.
Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
But obviously, jokes aside, Philip Billing was absolutely phenomenal last season, really picking up where the strikers and wingers weren't for Bournemouth. Once again, I do think that is something Bournemouth still have to sort out. They've got a lot of strikers in their team, but none of them seem to be scoring. I do think Justin Kluivert will be good for Bournemouth though, but in terms of their best player, I do think it will be Philip Billing. Now, jumping into second place, or our second team, we have Arsenal, which saying second place might bring a tiny bit of PTSD to Arsenal. I am sorry about that, but I do think this is a team with a lot of honourable mentions. I think Saka is the best player in this Arsenal team, but I'm going to go for the likes of Martin Odegaard. Once again, as I said, there are a lot of honourable mentions. You could go for Ramsdale, you could go for Declan Rice. There are so many options. But looking at Martin Odegaard being the captain of this Arsenal team, he was phenomenal last season, scoring 15 goals in the Prem, getting 7 assists. Once again, he did absolutely everything he had to do for that Arsenal team.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I think playing Champions League football this season, they do need a true leader in that team, and I do think Martin Odegaard will be their man. As I said, Saka probably is the better player in my opinion, but in terms of a player who's extremely crucial and is extremely important to this team, I would almost say that Odegaard is more important to them. Now, jumping into our next team, we have Aston Villa, or should I say Aston Villarreal. As we know, Unai Emery has been absolutely brilliant with them, achieving European football with Aston Villa, and he's brought in some absolutely exceptional signings. And as much as I want to go for someone like Diaby or Ollie Watkins, I'm going to go for Pau Torres, one of the new boys in the team. As we know, as a defender, is extremely good defensively, but is also a really good ball-playing centre-back. And I feel like having his reliability at the back is going to sort out a lot of defensive errors that Aston Villa had last season. Once again, I still can't believe he was linked to Manchester United a year or two ago for like £60 million, but has now moved to Aston Villa for only, what, £31 million?
Don't hate the player, hate the game, son.
An absolute steal, and I do think he'll be Villa's best player. Now, jumping into our next team, we've got Brentford, the Bees. And talking about the Bees, they are missing their sting up front as Ivan Toney is out of the team. And I do think a lot of eyes are on that Brentford attack, talking about who's going to score the goals now. Once again, when you lose your 20 goal a season kind of striker, that's bound to happen. But I don't think they are in as much trouble as people think. I think the likes of Bryan Mbeumo will be brilliant for them. As we know, the 23-year-old Cameroonian attacker, although he looks like a 35-year-old accountant, has been brilliant over the last few years. I mean, last season, 9 goals and 8 assists in the Prem. Season before that, 4 goals and 7 assists. I think Bryan Mbeumo is a brilliant player, and he does show up in big games. I mean, last season alone, he scored versus Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool, and 2 versus Tottenham Hotspurs. Bryan Mbeumo is an absolutely brilliant attacker, and in a weird way, I do feel like Ivan Toney being out of the squad will truly let him Mbeumo shine now, and a lot of people will see his full potential. Now, jumping into our next team, we've got the likes of Brighton. Now, yes, I know there are a lot of honourable mentions for a team like this. I think a lot of people will mention the likes of Matomo, lots of people will mention Quisado, but I'm not quite sure that these players will stay at Brighton throughout the season. That's my only issue here. As we know, the likes of Chelsea are seriously gunning for the likes of Quisado, which, I mean, last time Chelsea really went for a youngster like this, Eden Hazard ended up getting a fine. Jokes aside, looking at this Brighton team, I'm going to go for a really interesting player here with Dennis Undev. Yes, I know that's an extremely odd one here, but looking at Undev as a striker last season, only got 5 goals in 22 games, which doesn't sound great, but he had extremely limited game time. And looking towards the end of the season, when he got a lot more game time and moved from a striker to an attacking midfielder, he scored 5 goals in the last 8 games of the season. And I do feel like that really showed me that Brighton can almost survive now that McAllister's left for Liverpool. I do think Undev is a player who goes seriously under the radar.
You need to leave!
I'm sorry. And I do think at the end of the day, he has potential to be their best player if the likes of Caicedo and Matomo leave. Once again, guys, this is just my opinion, looking at statistics, kind of gathering my own information. But if you guys have any disagreements, let me know in the comment section down below. But jumping into our next team, we've got Burnley. Now, once again, Burnley is a team that excites me tremendously. As we know, they are building a serious project under Vincent Kompany. Defensively, were brilliant in the championship last season. And there are a lot of honorable mentions here. But I'm going to mention their goalkeeper, Muric. As you know, 20 clean sheets in all competitions last season, 4 clean sheets in 6 games in the EFL Cup, got 74% save accuracy. As a goalkeeper, he was brilliant. And as we know, when teams do get promoted, we've seen in the past that their goalkeeper can almost play the most crucial role for them. We've seen that in the past with the likes of Sheffield United when they had Dean Henderson and so many others. And I do think Muric, as an example, will be the best example of that this season. And I feel like he'll play a huge role in Burnley staying in the Prem this season. Now, next up, we've got Chelsea. Now, obviously, look at the likes of Chelsea. Literally, their entire team has pretty much left. I mean, I don't really blame those Chelsea players who have left because the last time they got an attacker from RB Leipzig, I mean, it was Timo Werner. But obviously, jokes aside, I do think Christopher Nkunku will be Chelsea's best player this season. I mean, I think he's got incredible versatility, can play anywhere in that front 3 or in the midfield 3, has been brilliant so far throughout pre-season in terms of his numbers, has gotten something crazy like 36 goals and 17 assists across the last 2 seasons combined. I do think Christopher Nkunku is an absolutely brilliant player, and in a weird way, I feel like he fits Chelsea's system perfectly, which I really don't feel like a lot of players have. I do feel like he would almost fit perfectly as a Kai Havertz replacement, and he'll pretty much do what Kai Havertz wasn't able to do in his positions. Once again, tiny bit of a weird one, but I do think he'll be brilliant for them. Now, next up, we've got Crystal Palace. Now, once again, there are quite a few honorable mentions here. Wilfried Zaha has obviously just left the club, so that is massive for them. And as much as I want to mention the likes of Elise, although he scored that free kick versus Manchester United, I'll never forgive him for that, I'm not convinced that Elise will stay at Crystal Palace this season. Heavily linked to Chelsea and Manchester City, I'm not sure he's going to stay. And because of that, I have to go for the likes of Eze. As we know, the young attacking midfielder recently made an appearance for England. As we know, he's an absolutely brilliant player, was Crystal Palace's top goal scorer in the Premier League last season. And to be 100% honest with you, he's kind of the only reason I can see Crystal Palace scoring goals here. With Elise and Zaha leaving the club, I don't really see anyone else scoring goals. I do think this Crystal Palace team is good. I think they've got brilliant defensive and midfield options. But as I said, in terms of an attacking player, Eze really is the only attacking option I see here. Now, next up, we've got Everton. Now, looking at Everton, it really is like looking at a bad bucket of apples or a barrel of rotten apples.
Okay.
Am I speaking English? I don't know. But it is like looking at a barrel of rotten apples and trying to find a good one in there. I mean, looking at Everton, for the last 2 seasons, they have been struggling relegation, so it's difficult to pick a star out of there. But at the end of the day, one player that does seem to be shining in a struggling Everton team is Jordan Pickford, England's #1, and I do feel like he'll be their best player this season. Had the 3rd most saves in the Premier League last season with 124. Getting 8 clean sheets with this Everton team almost deserves a trophy by itself. I mean, screw that. Maybe Jordan Pickford even deserves a statue at Goodison Park. Looking at Jordan Pickford, the amount of work he's had to do for Everton, once again, I think it really has shown that he will be their best player this season. Now, of course, going from one goalkeeper to another, we've got Fulham next, and I'm going to go for Bernd Leno. I mean, ever since he was told that it's because of his injury that Messi won the World Cup, he has been a completely different animal. I mean, Bernd Leno, one of the only goalkeepers with more saves in Pickford last season, with 144. As we know, also 8 clean sheets, and I think he's been absolutely monstrous for Fulham. Once again, in terms of his saving and defensive ability, as a goalkeeper, he reads the game so incredibly well, and in a Fulham team like this with so much talent around him, I do think it is a major compliment. As we know, the likes of Mitrovic probably won't be at Fulham next season, which is a huge reason to why I'm going for Leno. Although once again, you could mention the likes of Polina, Andres Pereira, Willian. Once again, at the end of the day, I think it'll be Leno. Now, next up, we've got Liverpool. Now, once again, looking at Liverpool, I could go for a safe option like Mo Salah.
Boring.
Who even on his worst ever Prem season got 31 goal contributions. I'm going to go for an interesting one here with Darwin Núñez. Obviously, look at Darwin Núñez last season in the Prem, got 9 goals, got 4 goals in 8 Champions League games, which is not a bad turnaround. I do feel like he received a lot of hate in the Prem last season, but let's be honest, it's when you compare him directly to the likes of Erling Haaland.
A bit shit, but that's how it is.
Which, when you compare anyone to Erling Haaland, it's just absolute game over. At the end of the day, I still think Darwin Núñez has the brilliant makings of a young striker in him, and I do feel like this season things could be a bit different, especially since they've totally rejuvenated their midfield. I feel like more creative attacking possibilities will happen there, and I feel like a lot of pressure will be taken off of the attack to create everything themselves. I do feel like Trent's playing in a new position as an honourable mention. I do think Virgil van Dijk being captain is an honourable mention, but as I said, it's just a gut feeling this time around that Darwin Núñez will be special. Now, next up, we've got new boys to the Premier League with the likes of Luton. Now, of course, looking at Luton, I could go for someone like Marvellous Nakamba. I mean, he's literally got Marvellous in his name. But I've gone for the likes of one of their best players from last season. Once again, I'm sorry for pronunciation here. But Carlton Morris obviously was brilliant in the Championship. I mean, he is such a strong, reliable striker, getting 20 goals in the Championship last season. He's a very physical player, always able to body defenders off of him. I mean, when you get those ads late at night asking if you're looking for a strong independent male, it is probably Morris. No, am I the only one who gets those ads? But looking at Carlton Morris, as I said, 20 goals and 7 assists in the Championship last season. I know they're not quite Ivan Toney or Mitrovic numbers, but still absolutely brilliant. Got more winning goals in the Championship last season than any other player. And in terms of scoring goals, I do think if there's any way Luton can stay up next season, it will be because of him. Now, next up, we've got Manchester City. Now, I mean, how much time do I spend on this one? It has to be the robot Erling Haaland. Looking at him, I mean, 52 goals in 53 appearances across all competitions. How do you not select a striker like him or a player like him to be their best player?
The LeBron James of soccer?
Yes, you could mention Kevin De Bruyne. Absolutely brilliant. Yes, you could mention someone random like a Ruben Diaz or a Nathan Aka or someone really out there. But bottom line is the fact that Erling Haaland on his day may be the best player in world football at the moment, and it just has to be him. Now, of course, moving from the blue side of Manchester to the red, we've got Manchester United. Now, of course, I do think a lot of people will mention the likes of Andre Onana as a brand new goalkeeper, but I do think it is going to be extremely hard to follow up on David De Gea. Yes, I understand that he became a meme, that maybe he wasn't the best with his feet, but at the end of the day, he still won the Golden Glove last season. He was brilliant for Manchester United, and I don't think people quite realize how good David De Gea truly was for United. In terms of the best player in this Manchester United team, I'm going to go for Bruno Fernandes, which, yes, I know he likes to dive here and there. He dives like an Olympic swimmer, but at the end of the day, I mean, he's our Olympic swimmer. He's like Manchester United's own Michael Phelps. But obviously, looking at Bruno Fernandes, no matter what you think of him, he's always up there in terms of the top goal scorer or assist maker for Manchester United, and on his day is the most reliable, and as Manchester United's captain, he probably is their best player.
Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now.
Now, next up, we've got Newcastle United, which, as we know, they've got a lot of money in this team. They're bringing in players like Tonali and one or two others, and I'm very tempted to go for someone like Alexander Isak up front, because I do think he will score a lot of goals. But at the end of the day, I'm going for another captain with Kieran Trippier. I mean, ever since he's played for the likes of Newcastle United ever since he showed up for them, signed for them. I do think he's been absolutely pivotal when it comes to set piece ability. His leadership ability is absolutely huge. One of the best right backs in the league, and I would say maybe last season was the best right back in the Prem. I mean, he's just been revolutionary for Newcastle United, and I do not think we can underestimate how important he is to this team. Now, next up, we've got Nottingham Forest. Now, looking at Nottingham Forest, there are one or two names I could mention here. I was tempted to mention the likes of Owoni, the Nigerian striker, after his brilliant end to last season. But it just has to be Gibbs White. As we know, just won the Under-21 Euros this year, and along with that, 8 goals or 5 goals and 8 assists in the Premier League this season. Gibbs White is absolutely brilliant. I'm still surprised that Wolverhampton Wanderers did let him go. But once again, absolutely crucial to Nottingham Forest staying up last season, and I think he'll be even better this year. Now, next up, we've got Sheffield United. Now, looking at Sheffield United, I do think they are in dire need of a brand new attacker.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
But at the end of the day, it's very difficult. I would say that Sheffield United was the most difficult team for me to do this on. I really do think they are lacking when it comes to attacking numbers. Even in terms of their midfield, they need a total rebuild. And because of that, I am going to go for their centre-back, who was maybe the best in the championship last season, with the likes of Ahmed Tozi. Once again, I'm sorry, I absolutely butchered that. But the Bosnian centre-back, as we know, scored 6 goals in the championship last season when he was starting for this team, got 16 clean sheets in 32 games in the championship. I do think he is a very solid centre-back, is one of those centre-backs who could be picked up by a bigger team later on. But once again, in terms of current players in the squad, I do feel like he is Sheffield United's best option. Now, next up, we've got Tottenham Hotspurs, which Tottenham Hotspurs, this is a very, very weird one because I feel like the normal would be Harry Kane. But we're not even sure whether Harry Kane will be at Tottenham Hotspurs come the beginning of the season.
Yes. Did you get a good laugh for it there? Yeah. You got what you got? 1-8? Yeah.
Heavily linked to the likes of Bayern Munich. But regardless of that, I'm going to go for James Maddison. As we know, has been brilliant for Leicester City over the last few years. And I do feel like his creative numbers will be brilliant for Spurs. Because if Kane stays at the club, I do think Maddison will take a lot of pressure off of Kane in terms of Kane doing everything himself, especially moving back to the centre of the park. And I do think if they do get rid of the likes of Harry Kane, James Maddison is one of those midfielders who would make the replacement striker look even better.
Don't give me hope.
Once again, James Maddison, so heavily underrated, and I think he'll be brilliant for Tottenham Hotspurs. Now, jumping into our second last club, we've got West Ham United, which, once again, slightly difficult. They were absolutely horrendous last season.
Come to negotiate, eh? Have you slimy git? Look what I got.
And it's kind of difficult to choose between players like, as we know, Ben Rama, Bowen. I was very tempted to go for them. But I'm going to go for Lucas Paqueta. I don't feel like we saw the best of them last season, purely because of how underwhelming West Ham United was. But of course, when he really did shine, he was the best player on the field. And I do have a special feeling that on his day, he could be one of the best midfielders in the Prem. I do think he is a brilliant player. I think his technical ability is very, very good. I feel like he could really get West Ham United out of a few sticky situations. And once again, just a gut feeling that he will be their best player. But of course, that does take us to our final team of the video with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Which of course, guys, don't forget, if you did enjoy this video, do leave a like down below. And don't forget to subscribe while you're down there as well. We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. But of course, looking at West Ham United, this was so incredibly difficult. Looking at them, I mean, they've pretty much gotten rid of their entire team. Whether it be the likes of Ruben Neves, Adama Traore, Raul Jimenez, this Wolverhampton Wanderers team really is just left for dead. I mean, looking at their attacking numbers, I don't think will be any of their attackers this season, because the most any player has scored for Wolverhampton Wanderers in the Premier League in the last 3 years is 6 goals. Once again, absolutely horrific. But in terms of a player, I do think it could be Pedro Neto, to be honest. Once again, in terms of exciting young players in world football, he really is the only exciting kind of player I see at Wolverhampton Wanderers. I mean, unless you go for something like Jose Sa between the posts. Once again, Pedro Neto, as we know, on his day, brilliant young player. I don't think he'll stay at Wolves the entirety of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if some big top 6 team did snatch him up. But as I said, in terms of what Wolves currently has, probably is their best option. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today's video in terms of all 20 Premier League teams and who I think their best player will be this season. As I said, let me know in the comment section down below if you have any disagreements with me, along with liking and subscribing. But of course, I'll see you guys very, very soon with a brand new video, because this has been Finn, FYNN. Cheers.